It was a rainy Friday night in the heart of the city. The upscale restaurant was filled with dim golden lights, the soft hum of piano music, and the sound of crystal glasses clinking. Everyone there seemed perfectly matched, couples laughing, friends sharing meals, waiters gliding with practiced elegance. But at a corner table near the window, where the raindrops painted silver streaks against the glass, sat a woman whose presence demanded attention even in silence. Her name was Elena Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, one of the most powerful companies in the city. Dressed in a tailored navy blue dress with a silver necklace that sparkled under the chandelier, Elena looked like a queen sitting on her throne. Yet there was one thing people always noticed: she sat in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down after a tragic car accident 2 years earlier. Her beauty was undeniable, her aura unmatched, but her eyes carried the weight of pain, betrayal, and loneliness. This was supposed to be her first step into moving on. Tonight was a blind date arranged by her well-meaning but pushy best friend, Olivia. Olivia had insisted, "Elena, you've buried yourself in work for too long. You need to meet someone who sees you, not the chair. Just give it one evening, please." Reluctantly, Elena had agreed, though every nerve in her body screamed she was making a mistake. As the minutes ticked by, Elena's patience wore thin. She glanced at the clock on her phone, 8:15 p.m. The date was supposed to arrive at 8 sharp. Typical. She almost laughed bitterly. Men had once lined up to be near her, to charm her, to impress her, but that was before the accident. Since then, she had seen their pity, their discomfort, their excuses to leave early. Tonight would be no different, she thought. And then, the doors to the restaurant burst open with a gust of cold wind and rain. Heads turned as a tall man stumbled in, shaking water off his jacket. He wasn't like the others here. He wasn't polished in a tailored suit or wearing expensive cologne. He wore a faded leather jacket, his boots muddy from the storm, and his hands carried the unmistakable stains of engine grease. He looked rugged, tired, but his eyes, deep brown with a hint of warmth, held a quiet strength. His name was Daniel Cole, a mechanic who worked at a small auto shop across town. And though he had no idea, tonight he was about to collide with a world far above his own. Daniel scanned the room, clearly out of place. A waiter approached, asking if he needed help, and Daniel muttered something before checking his phone. He spotted Elena at the corner table, looking as though she'd been carved out of elegance itself. For a brief second, he hesitated. She was far too beautiful, far too refined. This had to be a mistake. But his sister had begged him to go on this blind date. "You never do anything fun, Danny. Just go meet her, maybe laugh a little." So here he was, dripping wet. Elena's eyes narrowed as she saw him approach. This was her date? A mechanic? Her stomach twisted with irritation. She had expected someone polished, someone at least remotely matching her world. But this man looked like he'd walked straight out of a garage into a 5-star restaurant. She almost asked him to leave before he even sat down. Elena Sterling?" Daniel asked awkwardly, pulling out the chair across from her. His voice was deep, unpolished, but oddly grounding. "Yes," she replied coolly, raising an eyebrow. "And you must be lost?" Daniel chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "Blind date? Olivia set this up?" "I'm Daniel." Her jaw tightened. "Of course she did," Elena muttered under her breath, making Daniel wince. The evening began as a disaster. Elena was sharp-tongued, defensive, and clearly uninterested. Daniel, though kind, seemed painfully aware of how out of place he was. He fumbled with the fancy menu, mispronounced the French dishes, and earned a few judgmental looks from nearby diners. Elena rolled her eyes more than once. At one point, when he knocked over the water glass, she sighed heavily, "Do you even belong here?" But then something unexpected happened. When the waiter returned to take their order, Elena requested something light, explaining she had dietary restrictions since the accident. The waiter, too polite to show it, glanced at her wheelchair. It was subtle, but Daniel noticed. And for the first time all night, his clumsy posture straightened, his tone sharpened. "Hey," he said firmly to the waiter, his eyes narrowing. She said what she wanted. "Don't look at the chair. Look at her." The waiter stammered, apologized, and hurried away. Elena froze, stunned. No one had ever spoken up like that for her. Not in that way. Not without pity, not with sympathy, just respect. Her gaze softened slightly as she looked at Daniel again. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this man than grease-stained hands and mismatched clothes. As the night went on, their conversation shifted. Daniel talked about his life, the auto shop his father left him, the struggles of keeping it afloat, the joy he found in fixing something broken and giving it new life. Elena, against her better judgment, found herself listening. She even smiled once, though she quickly hid it behind her glass of wine. By the end of the evening, when the rain had stopped and the restaurant began to empty, Elena realized something she hadn't felt in years, a flicker of warmth in her chest. As Daniel helped wheel her to the door, fumbling awkwardly but with genuine care, he grinned sheepishly. "So, I guess this was a disaster, huh?" Elena surprised herself by laughing, a soft, genuine laugh that turned heads around them. "Yes," she said. "But maybe not the worst kind." And for the first time in years, she left a place not with bitterness, but with the faintest spark of hope. The following week, Elena Sterling sat in her office, high above the city in the gleaming Sterling Enterprises Tower, her mind replaying the night she least expected to remember, a night that should have been a disaster but left a strange imprint on her heart. She had spent years building a fortress around her emotions, hiding behind her iron will and corporate empire, convincing herself she was untouchable, unshakable, and perfectly fine without companionship, but Daniel Cole's presence had unsettled her carefully maintained control. His laughter still echoed in her ears, his protective words to the waiter replayed in her mind, and the way he looked at her, not at the chair, burned in her memory with uncomfortable warmth. She scolded herself repeatedly, reminding herself that he was a mechanic, a man who lived in a world far from hers, a man who knew nothing of boardrooms, billion-dollar deals, or the ruthless sharks who circled her every day, and yet, every time she thought of dismissing him from her mind, her heart whispered otherwise. Then, unexpectedly, an email appeared in her inbox, short, simple, and written in clumsy but genuine words. "Hey, I had a good time the other night. Wouldn't mind seeing you again. Maybe something less fancy? Coffee? Daniel." She stared at it for an hour before replying, her fingers hesitating on the keyboard, and finally wrote back a single line, 1 hour. "Tomorrow. Don't be late." The next day, she rolled into a small, cozy cafe tucked away from the city's rush, a place she hadn't been to since before her accident. The smell of coffee beans and pastries filled the air, and for once, no one looked at her as the CEO in a wheelchair. She was just a woman, waiting. Daniel was already there, nervously drumming his fingers on the table, wearing the same leather jacket but with a clean shirt underneath, as though he had actually tried, and when he saw her, his entire face lit up with a smile so genuine that it disarmed her usual icy expression. Their conversation flowed easier this time, free from the weight of chandeliers and expensive menus. He made her laugh without even trying, telling her stories about stubborn engines, crazy customers, and his clumsy attempts at cooking that always ended in smoke alarms, while she shared pieces of herself she rarely revealed, how lonely her penthouse felt at night, how suffocating the pitying looks of business partners were, how she missed dancing even though her legs no longer moved. For every truth she let slip, he listened with an attentiveness she hadn't experienced in years, and when she grew self-conscious, he would crack a joke or remind her, "You're still the strongest person in the room, Elena. Wheelchair or not." Slowly, she began to see the world through his eyes, where broken things weren't abandoned, they were fixed, restored, and given new life, and perhaps that philosophy was exactly what her heart needed. But not everyone approved. Word of her being seen with a mechanic spread through whispers in her company, and soon Olivia stormed into her office, concerned. "Elena, do you realize what people are saying? You can't be seen dating someone like him, it'll ruin your image, your reputation." Elena's jaw tightened. She had always valued Olivia's honesty, but for the first time she felt anger rise. "So, my image is worth more than my happiness," she snapped, shocking even herself. That night, she told Daniel about the confrontation, half expecting him to back away, to realize he didn't belong in her world, but instead he shrugged with that easy grin. "Let them talk. They don't know you like I do. And honestly, Elena, I don't care if your friends, your board, or the whole city disapproves. I'm not here for them. I'm here for you." Those words pierced through years of icy walls, and she felt something crack inside her, something she thought was gone forever: trust. Their bond grew, but so did the tests. One evening, as they strolled through the park, Daniel gently pushing her wheelchair while autumn leaves fell around them, Elena confessed her greatest fear. "I don't want to be a burden. I've heard it before, men leaving because they couldn't handle this," she whispered, motioning toward her chair. Daniel stopped, crouched down so his eyes met hers, and said firmly, "You are not a burden. You're a challenge, yes. But you're also a miracle. I fix broken machines all day, Elena, but you fix me without even trying. Don't you see? I need you as much as you think you need me." Tears filled her eyes, and for the first time in years, she let someone hold her hand without pulling away. Just when it seemed she had found her long-lost happiness, another blow struck. At a high-profile company gala, where investors and politicians mingled in glittering gowns and tuxedos, Elena arrived with Daniel at her side. Whispers erupted immediately. Disdainful looks at his plain suit, sneers at the grease beneath his fingernails that no soap could fully erase. One of her rivals, a smug executive named Marcus, smirked and loudly said, "Interesting choice, Elena. I see you've traded billionaires for mechanics. Desperate times, I suppose." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Elena's heart burned with shame, but before she could respond, Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady and sharp. "You know, I fix cars that people like you can't even drive without breaking." Maybe Elena needs someone real beside her, not another shallow suit with more money than backbone. The room went silent, jaws dropped, and Elena's heart swelled with pride as she realized this man had given her something no one else ever dared: unshakable loyalty. She squeezed his hand that night and whispered, "You make me smile in places I thought were dead." The days that followed were not without struggle. Her board questioned her judgment, Olivia pleaded again. And Daniel's business began to suffer because some wealthy clients pulled away when they discovered his connection to her. It reached a breaking point when Daniel almost walked away, believing that staying would cost her too much. "Elena, maybe Olivia's right. You deserve someone who won't drag you down," he muttered one late night outside his garage. But Elena, her eyes blazing with a fire not seen in years, wheeled closer and said fiercely, "Daniel Cole, don't you dare decide for me. I built an empire from scratch, I faced death and came back, and I choose you, not because I need saving, but because with you, I finally feel alive. If you walk away, you'll be the coward, not me." Daniel's eyes softened, tears threatening, and he pulled her into his arms, whispering, "Then I'm never leaving." From then on, their love only grew stronger. Elena began visiting his garage, surprising his customers when the powerful CEO rolled in with grease on her hands from helping him with small tasks. Daniel started attending her meetings as quiet support, reminding her through his steady presence that she was never alone. The city buzzed with gossip, but gradually, respect replaced ridicule as people saw that their connection was not a fling, not a scandal, but something rare, real love that defied circumstances, wealth, and judgment. Months later, at the very cafe where it all began, Daniel bent down on one knee, not with a diamond worth millions, but with a simple silver ring that had belonged to his mother, and asked her, his voice trembling, "Elena Sterling, will you marry me and let me keep making you smile for the rest of our lives?" Her answer was immediate, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes." And so, what began as a blind date disaster became the story of a lifetime, a paralyzed CEO who thought her heart was broken forever, and a humble mechanic who walked into her world uninvited but left it transformed. Elena never expected to smile again, but with Daniel, she found laughter, strength, and a love deeper than she ever dreamed possible.